Today, nearly 60% of the world's population lives in cities, a share that will rise to almost 70% by 2050. Cities are also a key driver of national growth and development, accounting for more than 80% of global GDP and almost 90% of private sector job creation. However, cities are also a key source and target of the climate crisis, generating 70% of greenhouse gas emissions. The concentration of people, infrastructure and economic activity in cities also makes them particularly vulnerable to climate change and other natural hazards. How urbanization is managed will have long-lasting, irreversible impacts on the planet. Hence, why we have Sulaiman Saheh, the Director of Research at Rahim & Co. International, Sedang Berhad on Google Meet with us this morning on how do we make Malaysian cities, especially amongst the world's most livable cities. Thank you, Sulaiman, for joining me. Firstly, from the introduction, how do we define a truly livable city? Where do Malaysian cities currently rank globally, and what are key lessons can we learn from the world's best benchmark to enhance our urban environments?
Thank you very much, Nia. Good morning. In making an assessment whether a place is a great place to live in, that's why Liveable City concept is an index that's being used worldwide. To make sure that a city is livable, there are certain parameters or metrics that are being used. Typically, it will cover issues on safety, in terms of security, in terms of the healthcare or how healthy the city is, the education, as well as the culture and environment, the activities that you can actually enjoy within the city, as well as the infrastructure. And on top of that, if we were to expand that in terms of the livability from the perspective of affordability, cost of living, how the economic progress or vibrancy of the city is also a key element there. In terms of how livable a city is, the Economist Intelligence Unit, EIU, have actually came up with a global livability index. This is where one of the parameters that's being used as a comparison between different cities around the world. In 2023, Kuala Lumpur, which is Malaysia's most livable city amongst all the cities, ranked 94 out of the almost 200 cities around the world that's being assessed by the index. This is actually an improvement by about 16 positions from the previous year, but it is actually an evidence of there's still a lot of room for improvement. We have Malaysia's cities are quite livable, are very livable, but globally, when we actually compare with other countries, there are others who are actually doing more things. They're more attractive. Weather is one, but in terms of how the conducive environment is, that's where we actually look at. And you actually asked about some of the comparable cities. If you look into Vienna in Austria, Copenhagen in Denmark, or even Singapore next door, the livability index are quite high over there. Be it it's different, it has different dynamics, but Singapore is actually quite close to Malaysia. This is where there are certain things that we can actually learn. There's the elements of the hard infrastructure or hardware, if you like, as well as the software that makes it all very livable for the residents as well as for visitors.
As you mentioned, as Malaysia rise to the 94th rank globally, there's still a lot room for improvement. But what are the biggest urban planning challenges hindering Malaysia from achieving world-class livability standards? And is the current urban governance structure conducive to achieving this, or do we need major reforms?
I think when we talk about an urban challenge in Malaysia, number one that pops in is actually traffic congestion. And this is not just a scenario in Malaysia, but it is also a scenario in many, many countries around the world, which comes to the point where public transportation plays a major role in a city's livability, in a city's intra-city mobility, and or they call it urban mobility within the city as well as intercities as well. Another challenge would be actually because of our land and geography, as well as how the lands are actually administered in the country. There's a bit of an urban sprawl. Urban sprawl meaning that there's concentration of infrastructure has to actually be geographically widened, which actually raises a bit of concern in terms of inefficiency. But that in itself, there's two angles to that, because the urban sprawl was actually due to the cheaper land outside the city centers, which makes the houses more affordable. So then it comes to the point of affordability, in terms of affordability, which is also a concern, especially for affordability of home purchases or access to homes, be rental or actually purchasing. And another thing is, one of the things that we think it's actually quite important of late and highlighted by some of the green cityscapes or streetscapes and some of the trees that actually was old and whatnot, the importance of green features and green infrastructure within the city center is also somewhere that we need to actually improve upon. Whether or not we need to actually have a reform, there's always the need for continuous improvement. And because it is a dynamic paradigm, the patterns of a demographic profile changes, the age profiling also change, as well as the inhabitants, the preferences, the lifestyle, where they work, and the kind of things that they like to do also change. And that actually needs consistent updating, where one of the things in terms of some of reforms that needs to actually fuel to this is a stronger collaboration between the different agencies. And as per a livable city, normally one of the things that is being used to help attain that is to convert ourselves into a smart city, where the city becomes very responsive through IoTs from data and whatnot, to actually come up and become very responsive and informative to the city administrators to respond to the needs of the city and its inhabitants. So data is also very important, and data collaboration between the agencies, between public infrastructure data, as well as making it publicly available for decision makers to actually help make sure that our city improves.
One of the reforms that you mentioned, we talk about sustainability, green feature, green initiative, and then affordability, and also collaboration from different agencies. And take a look at reports, maybe a data-driven aspect. And talking about sustainability and affordability, how can Malaysia accelerate green building adoption and integrate renewable energy into city planning while balancing rapid urban expansion and minimizing costs for residents? As you mentioned, this is also one of the major aspects that need a reform.
One of the important aspects, although it has already been on, the effort has already been in place, is actually to create public awareness and education. On top of the public to actually understand, there's also the corporate awareness and interest towards those. So in terms of getting the buy-ins of the stakeholders or the actual users and implementers and users of the facility or green technology, we need to actually enable the ease of acquisition of those technology. So incentives, tax incentives, and grants even is actually important. One of the feature that's what relates to the awareness is that some of the communities, some of the local authorities actually have grants for communities to actually enhance certain green features or an urban farming facility, or even to collaborate to actually come up with a whole row of houses with solar panels. But these are the awareness aspect that needs to actually be enhanced further, so that people know that there are these facilities. On top of that, there's also the continued need for those initiatives and programs to be deployed to the market. Incorporating green features for energy efficiency within our building codes is actually very important as well. So this is basically how we can actually help this. But to control, or basically to actually assist the sustainability of urban growth, infrastructure layout is actually very important, and how it's being deployed, how cost efficient it is, as well as making it attractive, maybe through PPPs. It's actually one of the measures that's globally adopted to actually implement this.
And definitely all of this is important aspect that we need to take a look at awareness, community awareness, and then education and corporate awareness to facilitate technology and a green initiative. And you added also the grant from the local community, but we also, this is some of the key components that we need to take a look to how much extent that Malaysia's Smart City initiative must effectively improve urban livability. Maybe my last question, what are the critical gaps in Malaysia public transportation ecosystem, and what steps can be taken to make urban mobility more pedestrian-friendly and inclusive of cyclists?
For that, we have to actually allow the infrastructure to be implemented in a palatable way and usable way, user-friendly to the end users. So one of the biggest challenge is the last mile as well as the first mile factor. We actually have the distance covered in between the intercity or interregional development, but the last mile connectivity is important, and the first mile even to that. So the public transportation system that we actually have, the reachability to almost your doorstep is actually very important to lure people to come and use the public transportation. But in saying that, at the same time, we know Malaysia's weather. How is it like? Most of the people will actually say, I do not want to walk in the hot sun to actually go. So that's why the infrastructure in terms of covered pathway, lighted and secure is actually one. But when it comes to the city, this is where the green features, the plants, the green cityscape is actually very important to become a canopy to shade off urban heat, for example. And this is like a chicken and egg situation, because a lot of people, when they actually reduce, or not many of them actually use public transportation, so they rely on private transportation. That is a higher carbon footprint, which causes urban heat. So we need to actually reduce that by making them coming over to a more efficient public transportation network. And that's why the implementation of it. Of all things, that probably is the biggest challenge, the biggest step that we need to take in, on top of the continuously expanding the ticketing system, which is already done, making it more conducive, as well as for the disabled and elderly-friendly facilities.
As you mentioned, that we can recap, even though Malaysia rank of the smart cities has rise up and getting better, but there are still a lot to do for improvement, and we need collaboration from everyone and every group to ensure people can enjoy a comfortable, cost-efficient and sustainable living. Again, I want to say thank you very much to Sulaiman Saheh, Director of Research at Rahim & Co International, Serdam Berhad,